Let's discuss the top 5 commercial mowers of 2025. I've been watching these AI produced videos. You guys need to hear from a guy who absolutely lives and breathes these mowers. So in no particular order, let's start right now. At number 1, let's start with that John Deere 900 series. So what is in front of us right now is a John Deere Z960M. In the John Deere series, you can get a 915 all the way to a 970R. This is one of their very top models. The only thing that goes in different on these John Deere models, every time you change the last 2 digits, for example, if you go to the 970, you're getting a bigger engine than what we're talking about right now. The frame, all that, identical. Now, John Deere is a name that we all know, we've all heard it. I'm not just picking it for that name, for that paint color. When you sit on a John Deere commercial mower, me being a bigger guy, this is built like their farm equipment. Lots of cast iron pieces all the way around. Now, we're gonna talk about the frame, we're gonna talk about suspension, all the things that really matter when you should be looking at a mower. But the 2 things I think you wanna look at first is what engine are you getting and what transmissions. That engine is gonna matter as you try to maintain that blade tip speed under really thick, lush conditions. The transmission is gonna be your speed and your power going up hills and things of that nature. So like I said, that 900 series of John Deere has all sorts of different engine options. This being the Z960, you can get a 31 horsepower carbureted Kawasaki. If you go up to that 970 series, you're gonna get a 35 still carbureted Kawasaki engine. And then after talking about that engine, the most important thing that you need to know is transmission. So under here, they use 2 tough torque transmissions. These are the biggest tough torques you can get, really heavy duty. They're gonna last with everything in the industry. Now in every single model, I'm gonna flip open and kind of look at the accessibility. So if we look at this on this John Deere, I actually really like the accessibility on a John Deere mower. This is actually pretty open. I've got some access to the engine. I do have to pull a couple of bolts and I would be open with the shroud. But even right here, there's access to a battery. There is access with just moving a couple of things. I see some openness, okay? Now we're gonna talk about all the different systems, but I like that accessibility. Now looking at the front of this, like I said, John Deere does a lot of cast iron elements. These are really heavy duty, rugged type components. And John Deere, and them casting a lot of things, there's a lot of subtle curves that are in here that do add strength. And so you kind of see that all throughout the mower, these slight curves and angles and rigidity. They've been making these for such a long time. They've developed and they've kept with this frame a really long time. Now, they do something different than most in the industry. This has a 7-gauge deck and it's stamped. It's stamped, but it has a really heavy-duty reinforcement edge. Now, typically, you're always looking for that fabricated deck. I wouldn't take anything away from this deck. I think it's really heavy-duty. I haven't seen issues in this deck at all over time. They've been using this 7-iron deck for a long time. I've not seen issues where this is rusting through or it's bending. I wouldn't take anything away from it, the fact that this is such a heavy-duty stamped nature. And you'll notice in every single case, you're gonna have these really nice air dial seats. You're gonna get that as a standard with almost all of them. Helps with the ride tremendously. If you jump up in series, if you go to the 970R, which is their absolute Cadillac of a machine, you actually have a hydraulic lift deck that works off of this button. That's an awesome feature. This deck dial system I think is really easy to use. If I step up here right now and press this pedal, all I've got to do is spin the dial to the height that I want. I simply unlock and it will drop to whatever cutting height that I want, and then I can lock it in the upright position. I think it's a really nice, slick, good system there. But like I said, when I sit on this mower, this feels heavy. It feels heavy duty. I really like the way this feels. It feels solid. It moves fast. John Deere, you made an excellent product in this 960M. And before I move on to the next class, I think it's really critical at every single step. It's important to talk about these features, right? And they're gonna vary from mower to mower, but the price, you guys care about the price, right? If you get into this Z950 series, the one right below this, or you're around this 960 mark, you're looking at spending right around $16,000. If you jump up to the Z970R, you're gonna be above, just above $20,000. So just absolutely supremely high price points. What's the warranty that comes with that coverage? You're gonna get a 3-year warranty. That's a good industry standard, not the best, not the worst. John Deere, you've made a good mower. But now let's step up in class to what I believe to be the best ride in the industry. FERRIS is doing something that no one else in the industry is doing with this coil over shock system. So you notice you got this shock system. This whole platform is independently suspended from the rest of this frame, and it's sort of in a reel. If I step on the front of this, what you see as you are going across the lawn with the undulation, you're gonna have no better ride. It's such a heavy duty nature shock system with these independent arms going across. And if we go to the rear of the machine, you're gonna see the exact same thing, this coil over shock system. So this is their ISX 3300. This has a 40 horsepower Vanguard engine with their 500 oil guard system. One of the best, biggest block engines you can possibly get on the market. What a luxury that there's this much room to be able to fit this oil guard system in there. But again, just look on the rear end. If I step on this, look at the suspension that you're gonna get on that machine. Just an awesome ride. That's the biggest luxury of when you get into this FERRIS class. Now the ISX 3300, just like these others, we're looking at the biggest and best in each class. And what makes this one so special? It's that engine, okay? But I always talk about transmissions. So let's look under the hood, because I believe that FERRIS has actually done a very good job at making things very accessible. So as we're looking under the hood, the top of this fin right here, this is actually a ZT 5400 transmission. It's an absolute monster of a transmission. Just like the John Deere, you're looking at 12 mile per hour ground speeds. This will really zip across. Now, a difference between this and the John Deere is actually that you're going to see two oil reservoirs for the hydraulics, and if you went to that John Deere, there was only one. I like a system where you have a completely separated left and right side, because if you ever get contaminants or something goes wrong, you don't want it to cross-contaminate to the other side. That's a really nice thing that I see on this FERRIS mower. Now, out of all the mowers that we're talking about, this is the only one that I couldn't get brand new. I've got some dealer buddies, right? So I've gotten a couple over here to the shop, but this is from a very good friend of mine, and he uses this thing hard. We could probably have it a little bit cleaner, but one nice thing on this ISX 3300 is you get a nice air dial seat. Now, I couldn't benefit from this, I'm way too tall, but probably most of you actually get a headrest. I think they're one of the only ones that are doing this in the industry. So FERRIS is known for that supreme comfort. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the class below this is cut quality. John Deere's cut quality, I don't think you can ever say anything negative about that, but is it known in the industry as the absolute best quality of cut? I'm not so sure. Now, FERRIS uses this slope-nosed edge deck. It's the ride quality that you're getting. Another thing that I like, when I step up on the FERRIS, I feel like I'm sitting up high. And again, me, a bigger guy, I feel like I've got tons of room in here. I like this deck dial system. So right here, you've got 1/4 inch cutting increments. You can flip it where you want. I think it's really simple that you can simply press this forward and push out, and it will drop to your cutting height. And then hands-free, I can put it in a locking upright position. I just prefer it ever so slightly compared to that system over there, because I did have to turn that to get it into the locking position. And I like that it's spring-loaded, that it just pulls over like that. Another thing with these parking brake levers, that one I had to squeeze, push down, not a big deal. But with this FERRIS, it's so easy to flip it up and down. I just like that system a little bit better. The way this is laid out, I feel like I've got room. This particular model actually has an electronic button for the throttle system. I don't love these. You can get a FERRIS without that. That's just this particular model that I'm not, as fond of. And guys, don't shoot the messenger on these prices. If you want one of these models, this is gonna run you $19,000, around $799. I think it's going to depend on if you get, this model, or you get an ISX 3200, you can go to the 2100. So you can definitely save on that, but we're looking, at the best of the best price points in this class. And that's what's going to give you that 5400 transmission and everything else that we've talked about to this point on this FERRIS. And next, let's move over to what we love here at Howie Equipment. I'm a bad boy dealer, but hey, I try to keep it real. I'm gonna tell you about all the mowers that I like, which I've done thus far. But I purposely wanted to bring this mower up right after the FERRIS, because FERRIS has something really unique in the industry with this coilover shock system. And I showed you how much that really absorbs you on the front end. Well, Bad Boy does something in a different way. They have this rubber puck system. This is an independent arm, just like you saw over there. And they, just like the FERRIS, do give you suspension on the front end. Now, it's not as much. You'll see a more forgiving aspect over here on the FERRIS, but Bad Boy does it there. Bad Boy also gives you a rubber puck isolator there, and you probably think it's not really gonna stack up to the competition, but then to follow that up, they actually give you this independent trailing arm, just like an ATV or a car. And look at what happens if I go onto the rear end of this machine. Look at how much forgiveness that there is on this. So can I deny that FERRIS probably has the best ride in the industry? I probably can't, okay? But we're gonna get to the price point of this compared to some of the other competition, which puts it in this class of a mower you gotta consider if you're looking commercially, because that is an elite ride in the industry, but it comes at a different price point. We'll talk about some of those other features you get with Bad Boy. So like everything we've talked about, engine options. You can get a 38.5 fuel injected Kawasaki. Here at Howie Equipment, we like the fuel injected options. We like Kawasaki probably more than anything else in the industry. I think it's a great system right there. I just lean right here for the reliability aspect slightly more. That is one advantage you get with Bad Boy. You can get 3 or 4 different engine options in nearly every single class, and you don't always get that depending on which other brands that you're looking at. So there's an advantage there in the engine options, and I really like that you get such a big block engine on this, and I like that it's fuel injected, like I said. Now, the other thing we go to next in every single one of these talks is the transmissions. This has a different setup than what we've seen. Tough torque, then it was hydro gear, and this is sort of a mix of a couple different systems. So this has an independent pump and then a wheel motor. So this is a 16cc pump with hydraulic hoses that lead to a Parker wheel motor. It's a very high-end setup, and Bad Boy, if you're looking in here, is extremely accessible compared to the competition. And then one other advantage with Bad Boy is you're actually getting a 3-gauge deck. So what I didn't talk about in these classes below that is, in every single other mower we're looking at, in every other class you had a 7-gauge deck, but with Bad Boy you get a 3-gauge deck. If you look down this line right here, this is an incredibly thick and robust deck, so you really like that Bad Boy's always giving you those really heavy-duty components. If you look at the front end of this, this is just a monster, this cast iron piece. So Bad Boy is rugged. They use a lot of straight line motions. They make a really heavy-duty mower. What is the nice thing if you go to the Bad Boy is this was a 72-inch option. We're mentioning the prices of some of these other mowers. This one's at $12,599. This is a 72-inch. That was a 61-inch. There was a 72 before. So just an awesome price point compared to what you're seeing on the market. Now, for me to jump up here, again, I've got a lot of room up here. This also, like John Deere, uses that deck dial system. John Deere came out with that first. I bet Bad Boy probably took a look and liked it. This locking mechanism I like slightly more on the Bad Boy. It's got a little piece right here that if I press this completely hands-free, it will lock the deck upright, and then I can spin this to whatever I want. And then I can simply pull this up and it will drop the deck to wherever it is, and then hands-free I'm in transportation mode again. And then in the other 2 models prior to this, you had standard hour meters. One thing that Bad Boy's doing that's really nice is they have a really nice digital display screen. This is giving you maintenance intervals. They're doing maintenance intervals that tells you when to change the engine oil, hydraulic oil, grease the mower, and so on. So that's really nice. They're getting that standard on this 38.5 fuel-injected Kawasaki engine. And there's no denying, if you look at this mower, it's just a cool-looking mower. It's a rugged-looking mower. But speaking of rugged, that takes me to number 4, what I believe to be the most tank-like machine you can possibly get on the market, SCAG. SCAG makes this Turf Tiger 2, and there's really a special feeling that you get when you're on a SCAG machine, because when I think of SCAG, I think of completely industrial. And if you look at a lot of these components, it's just extremely well made. If you look at the quality of craftsmanship, the build quality, I think this wins over all of the competition. And like I said at the start of this, when I think of SCAG, I think of tank. And you have something unique that's not on any other mowers that we've seen when we get to how that deck works. But let's talk first about the engine like we have with all these other classes. So this horizontal shaft engine, this is a 40 horsepower engine by Briggs & Stratton. It's a Vanguard engine. This is an absolute monster of an engine. So to continue that tank theme, look at all the coverage and protection that you have on the engine. So it's not crazy that you have to pull this off, and you actually have really good access up to the engine. This one's unique because this has a horizontal shaft engine versus a vertical shaft engine. Now, to do this type of engine setup, there's a couple of advantages to doing it. And again, even though you have so much coverage and protection with SCAG, you don't lose accessibility, because you saw how easy it was for me to lift that, even though it was protected. Same thing back here. If I do this, I can lift, and this is the clutch. Now, normally this clutch is underneath the mower, a little bit harder to get to. It's got a belt-driven system right here that goes down, but if we poke our head underneath this, this has what's unique compared to all the other mowers. This has a drive shaft that actually powers the deck. So let's look underneath the machine. So the clutch, which was up higher, goes down here to a pulley, and then it comes across to this drive shaft. The drive shaft goes to a gearbox on the deck, which gives it just this robust feeling and farm-like feel when you're trying to cut your lawn, and gives you such a power point to your deck when you're trying to cut your grass. So as we look back into this region, this is that gearbox that's empowered with a pulley on top. That is what is supplying power to the deck through this belt. All of these systems are gonna have these big 5/8 belts that power the entire deck system, as everything is more industrial when you're getting to this type of class mower. Now, one thing that these SCAG lovers absolutely swear by is the fact that you have so many great greasable components on this mower. So if I look underneath these pulleys, there's actually a grease zerk. So you can actually be greasing your mower. All these other systems are really self-contained type systems. And if you're the type of person that likes to know that there is grease in these locations, you have that control with SCAG, which is really nice. Now, if you're cutting grass, you care about quality of cut. SCAG is known in the industry as having one of the best quality of cuts with their Velocity Plus deck. It just leaves a really nice look. I have commercial landscapers that talk to me about the quality that comes along with that. It's awesome that you can get such a nice quality of cut along with such an industrial type machine with this SCAG. So sitting on this, like the other machines, I do feel like I've got tons of room on this. Now, we just talked about suspension in these other two mowers. If you're not a fan of this SCAG, they have a Cheetah. The Cheetah has somewhat of a system that the whole platform is suspended. I don't think it's the best platform that's out there, but it adds a really nice amount of suspension. Now, I love those two systems we just saw before this, but a nice air dial seat does absolute wonders for you, but it definitely doesn't match what you're getting, I think, between that bad boy and that FERRIS. And just looking at all these components here, everything feels really industrial like we just talked about. If I press this is very similar to kind of that feel that I think we saw in that FERRIS. So if I press this pedal up, it will lock hands-free like we saw over in that FERRIS. This has a different system for locking with your foot brake. So before you take off, this has a pedal and you have to release that. If I press this forward, pull it back, then it brakes again. So if I just press and release it, it's really not bad. It's kind of a nice park brake system, I think, compared to what's out there. And I'll say one thing I have not been talking about enough to this point is warranties. I mentioned it at the John Deere. Now, I'm not a SCAG dealer, but doing the research, this has a 5-year warranty. That's an awesome warranty, but it does say that it's limited at the 750-hour mark. It's important that I'm talking about this here because we're gonna have to go back and talk about the warranties before this. So the bad boy only comes with a 2-year warranty, unlimited hours, which is a plus. So if you are a commercial guy that puts tons and tons of hours, that warranty technically could be better depending on how many hours you're putting on the machine. The engine will have a 3-year warranty on this machine. If I go back to the FERRIS, this has what they call a 2+2 warranty. You have a 2-year unlimited hour warranty, or there is a limit at 500 hours up to 4 years, an additional 2 years past, okay? But if you get past that 600-hour mark at year 3, you're out of luck. So kind of a unique warranty there. So SCAG with that 5-year, 750-hour warranty, that's an awesome warranty. Bad boy does get dogged a little bit for that warranty, but the fact that it's unlimited hours could be an advantage if you're piling lots of hours on your machine. And then one other thing I haven't talked about in all these classes before this, we started the John Deere 24-inch tires. Then you got 26-inch tires, 26-inch tires. And again, with the SCAG, you get 26-inch tires. That's gonna help that speed. It's also gonna help you maintain and hold a hill. And one thing that I do like on these tires is this has the Carlisle turf tires. 3 out of the 4 mowers we've seen so far have that tire. Bad boy uses a Reaper tire. I actually like the Carlisles probably a little bit more. There's a little bit better grippage, and I think it doesn't rip your lawn up quite as much, so I do like that it comes with the turf tire as well. Now, before we move on, as I'm mentioning every single time, how important that price point comes along. For everything we mentioned on what was great about SCAG, this is where it's gonna hurt your pocket. You're gonna be looking at $17,000 to $21,000, depending on which specs, depending on what engine options you choose with that. So you're getting a really industrial machine, but you definitely gotta pay for it, which is a slight disadvantage, but nevertheless, really awesome machine by SCAG, which takes us to our last mower in this class, TORO. And before I expound on TORO very much, I could have equally put a different mower in this class. I believe I could have equally have put an Exmark in this class. Now, TORO has a 4000 series and a 6000 series. We're showing you guys their 4000 series mower, as it does technically have the best warranty that they have, but a more expensive version in TORO is actually their 6000 series, which is identical as far as the drive components as the Exmark's Laser Z X Series. Now, in 2025, the Exmark has a new design on the outside that I think actually trumps the look of that 6000 series TORO, but the components are gonna remain the same. It's gonna be a Parker transmission, which is notoriously smooth as far as transmission types. It sits lower than this 4000 type machine. So we're gonna jump into the nitty gritty on this 4000, but no, I could be talking about that TORO 6000. I could be talking about the Exmark Laser Z X Series, also an amazing machine you could consider. But let's jump to the back of this TORO 4000 series. Now, as we look at the back of this TORO, this has a 35 horsepower carbureted engine. If you get into that 6000 series, or you talk about the Exmark Laser Z X Series, you can get very similar things. They have a 37 horse with the oil guard system that we saw in the Ferris. So there's gonna be different engine options at the top. Toro is gonna be no different here. Now, the Toro 4000 series has a different frame design. It's sort of got this big I-beam construction up front, really nice looking machine. This is gonna have the exact same transmission type as what we saw over in this Ferris class. So as we look back here, this has a ZT5400 transmission. We're talking 12 mile/hour ground speed. This thing is going to just scream across the lawn. Now, one thing I think you lose a little bit of with some of their new frame design is they've went for the look, but some of that accessibility, you cannot flip the seat up like you can with some of these other models. Everything's a little bit tighter in here. And one thing I wish that they would change is they have one external reservoir for the hydraulic system. I'd like it to be separated like I talked about in that Ferris class. The hydraulic system on the bad boy had 2 separate tanks. This also has 1 tank. So you're gonna see a mix between all these higher end models. I always like when it's separated. If I look at the front of this machine, they have just absolutely nailed the look on this. And just like a lot of these other machines, I think of all of them, this is the easiest to pull off and actually service your deck. I like how easy they've made that for accessing the deck. There are run flat tires on every single one of these models up until this point. That's what you're gonna see when you're spending this kind of money, getting this industrial a type of machine. And just like the other mowers in this class, this has the nice air dial seat. This has a system kind of more like the SCAG, more like the Ferris as far as how you're lifting the deck mechanism. So right here, kind of similarly, I can press this and it will drop it to my deck height, hands-free. I can go to transport mode. It's a really simple system. It's a magnetized pin. Really nice job by Toro there. Toro has very nice hour meters that are really high-end, consistent. I like what this is here. If you go into their 6000 series, they have sort of like a smart hour meter, kind of like we've seen. One thing I didn't mention is I'll just sneak peek real quick is SCAG has this tiger eye system. I really like with SCAG some of the things that they're showing you here and giving you a little bit more information on this screen. So I like this system probably as much, if not more than any of them, you know, as far as what you can get. Now, Toro, we're talking about quality cut and what you got over in the SCAG. Toro and Exmark, 2 different decks, but both known for quality of cut, right? So you're gonna get that if you go to Toro. One thing that I could talk about more and more, and it kind of surprised me as I just kept going deeper into the research going in this video, but warranty coverage. With Toro, with this machine, you get a 5-year or 1,500 hour warranty. That is really good compared to everything we've seen as far as the competition goes. In price point, you're getting this at $13,999. So you kind of fall in the middle of that price range. But I'll admit, if we're talking about the Toro 6000 series, we're gonna be right with these really high-end machines at $18,000 to $20,000, depending on what engine option you get. But right here at this 4000 series, I think it's kind of a sleeper mower by Toro that you're below that $15,000 price point, but you're getting that type of warranty coverage. If you are a commercial customer, that cannot be overseen. They're getting that type of warranty coverage when it's double the life of some of these other machines. That's something you really need to consider, that you're staying in this price point without spending that astronomical amount of money. And of course, we're talking really big numbers. I can't believe it's gotten to the point post-COVID that we're talking about mowers that are ranging from $12,000 to $22,000. But the reality is, if this is something that's making you money, or it's something that's buying back tons of your time, these are mowers that will last you 15 to 20 years. And you need to think about, if it's a business for you, this might be something you're looking at financing, right? So if you're spending $200 to $400 a month, $500 a month, that could well be worth it if you're making thousands and thousands of dollars off of that machine. And that's really what you gotta be looking at, is the longevity. If you're spending this kind of money, you will get that longevity. So you see, we got through all those mowers. There are lots of mowers I probably could have mentioned, right? There are 10, 15, 20 different mower brands that are out there. These are my top 5. And I think the best mowers you can get in 2025. Do you disagree with me? What did I miss? What other brand do you think could be in that 2025 lineup? But I hope this helps you look at the engine, look at the transmission, the build quality, and you will pick the right mower in 2025.